Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Secretary, welcome to our committee. It's interesting, I took a lot of notes. I had prepared questions, but I think I'm going in a very different direction. We've heard other colleagues talk about the NAEP scores, and I heard you say that the president was angered and embarrassed by these, and I think we all should be. But when you disaggregate those scores, they clearly show that low-income students score significantly lower than their white and higher-income peers, and that is mostly in part to ongoing disparities in educational access and quality, which makes much of what I'm hearing today that much more relevant. You mentioned Connecticut. We both come from the state of Connecticut. Connecticut relies on property taxes to fund education, and we have one of the largest income gaps in the nation, which means by design or default, low-income students face multiple challenges, including limited access to resources and opportunities outside of schools, which is why I don't understand many of the decisions made in this budget. One of my colleagues asked about collecting data on family composition and background. The Department of Education Office of Civil Rights is mandated by law to do that. I was pleased to hear you say that states do not, the Department of Education does not control curriculum, instructional materials, the teachers that are hired, which makes your words contradictory because every argument you have is to put local control back into the states. But states already have local control, as anyone who has any knowledge or background of education would already know. The role of the Department of Education would be the civil rights enforcement of those local controls, which again, the irony of this budget zeroing out American history and civic education programs when you couldn't even answer a question about Ruby Bridges or the election of President Biden, which are as basic as it gets. So I really, really don't understand it. But you are making the argument for me because when you respond to questions from my colleagues by saying that sounds like an issue for state legislatures, that is why the Office of Civil Rights is necessary, because state legislatures made the decision that Ruby Bridges did not have the right to a free and appropriate, high-quality public education. So you, Madam Secretary, are actually making the argument for the role of the department, not to dictate local curriculum instruction or instructional materials, but to make sure that those things are carried out by the department. That states follow the law, that they are doing those things. So 49 million children in this country receive public education services. About 3 million children are in charter schools. There are not enough charter school slots. So my questions are mainly focused on what about those other 46 million children. So it's mind-blowing. I hear you talk about safety, keeping students safe on school campuses, but not a word about the 390,000 students who have been affected by gun violence. I was in the classroom on the day Sandy Hook happened, and the federal government came in with almost $2 million to rebuild that community and provide programs for the surrounding communities. In your opening, I heard you mention student athletes and LGBTQ students twice, not one word. And even when my colleague asked you if you thought it was a public health crisis, you can't answer questions that affect the majority of students. So I'm not really sure. I am an educator by nature. I try to be supportive of what the Department of Education does because I need for you to succeed, for my students to succeed. But when you come in and say your final mission is to eliminate the department, it says to me that the 46 million children that are not receiving services do not matter. I've ran out most of my time, but this bill defunds literacy programs, eliminates 21st Century Community Learning Center, eliminates preschool grants for children with disabilities, eliminates, reduces funding for career and technical education, like all of these things. I'm going to ask you two really quick questions. Do you think that Holocaust education in our schools is a DEI program? There's no card for that. That's just yes or no.
I can look at whatever card I choose.
Holocaust education, is it a DEI? You can have a press conference to say whatever you want. I just need a quick answer to this.
Your soliloquy
is Holocaust, because this is my time, is Holocaust education a DEI program?
No.
Is African American Studies a DEI program?
I think I answered that with one.
I'm asking it again.
Listen, we should be
Just
able,
yes or no?
we should be able to teach
My
courses in their
point is they
entirety.
are DEI programs, both of them, because students need diversity, equity, and inclusion to understand their environments. So both Holocaust education and the teaching of African American history are important, which is why the state of Connecticut requires it in our social studies curriculum. You're talking out of both sides of your mouth. You can't support one without supporting the other. And looking at what happens in the schools and actually deferring to teachers, parents who are on curriculum committees, local boards of education in states who actually do the hard work
The gentlelady's
and
time has
listening to what
expired.
they say
I appreciate
would be
the
incredibly helpful in
passion,
this
but
role.
it's time to move on.
I yield back.
recognize-